I've missed my microphone and I've missed making videos like this, so I thought I'd get back to it, especially after watching a recent video by our friends over at the Serfs. And while watching it, I kept thinking of all these extra details, and hence the making of this video. And so I will also be reading this piece of writing by Matt Walsh from back in 2015 by this theocratic fascist. And what it is a defense of Josh Duggar. And so if that's the first time you're hearing that name and you've no idea who he is, then this should also be the warning. This video is going to discuss very disturbing and serious topics, like various forms of child abuse. And if you've never heard of Matt Walsh before, this is also a warning that this video is going to have very transphobic comments, which we are going to start this video off with. Matt Walsh from 2021.
You know, this is coming from someone who, they're saying, oh, your daughter, she could take care of herself. She doesn't need to be protected. You don't need to infantilize her. You're infantilizing your daughter by trying to stop grown men in dresses from walking into the bathroom and potentially abusing them. Meanwhile...
Yeah, I just really wanted to show people that Matt Walsh says he really cares about preventing his daughters from being abused. Now to this tweet from 2015. So according to my social media feeds, Josh Duggar did bad things a long time ago, which disproves Christianity. Fascinating logic. Alright. Now let's read what he wrote. And as I go through, I'll add the extra details that came to mind as I was watching the Serfs video. This is from The Blaze, title, "The Duggars aren't hypocrites, progressives are." And this is a quote from further in the article, so we'll get to that. From the 22nd of May 2015, and it was updated to add that TLC has reportedly pulled 19 kids and counting from its schedule. By now you've probably heard that Josh Duggar, oldest son in the 19 kids and counting family, did some very bad things a long time ago. Apparently when he was 14, Josh fondled several young girls, including a number of his younger sisters. After admitting to these acts, his parents presented the situation to their church's leadership, and Josh was sent to a family friend in Little Rock, where he spent several months doing physical labor.
We knew of a man who mentored young men, and he really helped young men who had made unwise choices in their lives to get straightened out. And he was running a little training center in Little Rock, Arkansas.
That was the father of the Duggar family. Now let's learn more about this friend in Little Rock. Inside Duggar cult, we were taught our bodies don't belong to us. That's the headline. Here's just one paragraph from the article. The many Duggar children were homeschooled using a faith-based program called Advanced Training Institute, ATI, created by IBLP founder Bill Gothard. Gothard even ran the facility that counseled a teenage Josh when he admitted to abusing his sisters. Although Gothard stepped down from IBLP in 2014 after being accused of sexual harassment himself, he continued to work with families, including the Duggars. Gothard has denied the sexual harassment claims against him. And as you can see in that box at the bottom there, it says the Institute in Basic Life Principles, which is what IBLP stands for, is allegedly a hotbed for sexual abuse. So they sent him to be counselled by someone who has been accused of sexual harassment at a place that is allegedly a hotbed for sexual abuse. Alright, now back to the article by Matt Walsh. When he came home, his parents brought him to a state trooper. The trooper talked to the boy, but no arrest was made. A police report was filed though, and Josh and his sisters received counselling. Alright, now let's learn more about this state trooper.
Surrender him, because there's been some question about whether you chose a friend, someone who you knew would go easy on him.
Yeah. Now, I had a towing business for years, and so I did know a lot of the officers around here, but we went into the Arkansas State Police and...
At police headquarters?
At the police headquarters, walked in, this man was there. We went in and talked to him and said, hey, my son has something that he needs to share with you. And we actually took a witness with us. We went in and sat down, and he shared everything.
He told it all?
He told everything. And we had no idea that what that officer was going through on his own.
So the audience knows that officer is now in jail for 56 years for child pornography charges. Yeah. Did you have any idea he was involved in any of that
no
at the
idea.
time?
That came out years later. I mean, we were like shocked to read that in the
So to critics who say, oh, they chose that guy because they thought he'd be sympathetic.
And so the state trooper that they took their son to go talk to has also been done for child pornography. Now, the fact that Megyn Kelly says that people think that you went to someone who'd be sympathetic, I didn't think of that until she said that. I actually thought, oh, whoa, what are the chances? But that's a very interesting point that was raised there. And now, see, there's a picture of him, and I thought I'd just speed past some more talking about how he was caught and they didn't know about it. But now listen to this. Listen to what they end with.
Josh a stern lecture.
He did what he did. I didn't know what he was going to do.
Fear of God in Josh.
Yes.
And
did he warn him that the law could come after him?
He said, and if you continue down this path, you're going to destroy your life and you could end up in prison.
You can be just like me.
Let's say I did that to lighten things up because these are pretty grim topics we're discussing. Now back to the article by Matt Walsh. The behaviour stopped there, and Josh has been upfront about it to anyone who actually needs to know this information. According to his wife, he confessed his past sins to her well before they were married. The family did not, however, announce these details to the world, mostly because there was no conceivable reason to. That is, until someone leaked it to a tabloid and the whole scandal exploded over the media yesterday. Remember, this is 2015. The backlash has been severe, not because Josh's actions were terrible, though they were, of course, but because the Duggars are a prominent Christian family who regularly speak out on contentious social issues like gay marriage. They are roundly despised for their beliefs, their outspoken nature, and for the parents' decision to have 19 kids. Progressive trolls have been anxiously waiting for a chance to burn them down and dance on their ashes, and now they have finally been given the opportunity. It certainly hasn't gone to waste. Just a cursory look at the blogosphere and my social media feeds reveals legions of people positively giddy about the situation. Relieved, ecstatic, finally they say, these Christians have been proven frauds. They are sinners, hypocrites. Jesus is a lie. Christianity is false.
The main charge we've heard from your critics has been they are hypocrites. They preached family values. Josh once said, we are the epitome of conservative values, and yet they had this secret, and they weren't honest with the world about who they were.
I don't think you go up to total strangers and say, hi, my name is so-and-so, and I want you to know what I did as a child, and just share everything about your past. You know, every family has things happen in the families. And some families maybe have darker things than others, but everybody deals with something.
But what about what the critics are going for is that you shouldn't have been preaching about moral values when you had a secret like this in your own family, that you should be calling other people sinners when you yourselves are sinners.
Our son violated God's principles of doing some improper touching. That was terrible. But yet, I think it's been recently said that what Josh did was inexcusable, but it was not unforgivable.
Mike Huckabee said that when I was a friend of your family. Michelle, let me ask you, because you were in the news for making a robocall that suggested transgendered people might want to go into the bathrooms of girls, locker rooms of girls, and that they may be child molesters.
Hello, this is Michelle Duggar. I'm calling to inform you of some shocking news that will affect the safety of Northwest Arkansas women and children. The Fayetteville City Council is voting on an ordinance this Tuesday night that would allow men, yes, I said men, to use women's and girls' restrooms, locker rooms, showers, sleeping areas, and other areas that are designated for females only. I don't believe the citizens of Fayetteville would want males with past child predator convictions that claim they are female to have a legal right to enter private areas reserved for women and girls. I doubt that Fayetteville parents would stand for a law that would endanger their daughters or allow them to be traumatized by a man joining them in their private space. We should never place the preference of an adult over the safety and innocence of a child. Parents, who do you want undressing next to your daughter at the public swimming pool's private changing area? I still believe that we are a society that puts women and children first. Women, young ladies, and little girls deserve to use the restroom in any other women's facility in peace and safety. Will you speak up for protecting women and children?
Folks have used that in the past week against you, saying, how could you unfairly, in their view, compare transgendered people to child molesters, suggest they are child molesters, knowing what you know about Josh?
I think that protecting young girls and not allowing young men and men in general to go into a girl's locker room is just common sense.
But this
Yeah, I thought I'd include the audio from that call so you could see exactly what she was doubling down on just there. And the rest of what they say here is, I just got to play it. It's something else.
is different because you injected child molestation into it.
I think you actually said pedophile in that, and actually a pedophile is an adult that preys on children. Joshua was actually 14 and just turned 15 when he did what he did. And I think the legal definition is 16 and up for being an adult preying on a child. So he was a child preying on a child.
You do not view Josh as a pedophile?
No.
No.
What I'm asking you is, can you understand the critics' reaction to this news?
I can understand that, but I think I know that every one of us have done things wrong. That's why Jesus came. I feel like this is more about there's an agenda, and there's people that are purposing to try to bring things out and twisting them to hurt and slander.
See how wild is that? In the matter of like a minute, she doubles down on her transphobic bathroom hysteria, and then the dad got real specific about the labels you use for his son and what he's done, and somehow still squares off that this is an agenda of someone to smear them. Oh my god. And I should mention that this interview happened a couple of weeks or so apparently after Matt Walsh wrote that article. Josh Duggar has already lost his job being publicly shamed and his name permanently sullied by these revelations, but critics are not satisfied. They want the show cancelled and anyone who supports the family to give up and join the mob of stone throwers and witch burners. They say that Josh is not the only villain here. His parents are also guilty for not going to the police immediately. Good thing they updated it with the fact that the show was cancelled. Now I'm actually supposed to be on vacation at the moment, but while the vultures gleefully descend upon this family, I feel the need to make a few points of clarification. Alright, Matt. The Duggars are Christian, the Duggars are conservative, the Duggars don't believe in gay marriage, someone in the Duggar family did something terrible. These are all facts, none of these facts conflict, none of these facts disprove any of the other facts. From the way liberals always react in these situations, you'd think that a Christian committing a sin delegitimizes the faith itself. But that's not quite accurate. Not the Duggars, not anyone claim that a faith in Jesus bestows perfect holiness on the faithful.
Do you think that the backlash against the Duggars has been greater because people object to who you are and what you stand for?
I think some out there do.
Yeah.
Do you think, in particular, your Christian beliefs are at issue here?
Well, I think as people on the outside think, well, Christians are supposed to be perfect. They're supposed to say, you're supposed to live this perfect life. No, you know what? All of us as Christians, we struggle every day.
They would indeed be correct in their assessment if the central tenet of the Christian faith was that all believers in Christ are without sin or blemish. But far from that being a doctrine of the religion, it is actually the precise opposite of what Christians believe. None of us, not the Duggars, not anyone, claim that a faith in Jesus bestows perfect holiness on the faithful. It is because of our sinful nature that we need him. When we sin, we do not disprove that thesis, we underscore it. A Christian failing to live up to his faith does not make him a hypocrite. It makes him cowardly perhaps, it makes him selfish, it makes him flawed, it makes him sinful, it makes him any number of things, but not necessarily a hypocrite. A hypocrite is an insincere person who misrepresents his own beliefs, but saying that you believe something is wrong only to turn around and do it doesn't prove that you never held that belief. It just proves that you were too weak to stand by it. No, Matt Walsh, a hypocrite is someone who acts in a way that goes against what they claim to believe. Another definition, someone who says they have particular moral beliefs but behave in a way that show these are not sincere. That's what a fucking hypocrite is. Somebody who does not practice what they preach. It almost doesn't matter what they actually fucking believe, it really just matters what they fucking say and then how they act. Okay, and back to the article. I'm not diminishing Josh Duggar's infractions. As I said, he did something very bad, horrendous, disturbing, evil. These were major sins. But Christians commit major sins sometimes, which is the whole reason why Jesus died on the cross. That doesn't negate or condone anything, but it shows that Christianity does not hide from the sinfulness of man. A Christian understands the depravity of human nature, so when a brother or sister does something depraved, our faith is not shaken. 2. Speaking of hypocrites, I'm going to be very frank with you. I simply don't believe most progressives actually care that Josh Duggar touched his sisters when he was 14. I don't believe they are upset about it, or that it offends them, or that they are morally troubled by it. I don't believe them, I just don't. I think they're the real hypocrites. After all, Lena Dunham admitted to inappropriately touching her sister, and she told the story in a jovial way as if it were an amusing anecdote. Unlike Josh, who repented long ago and when it was made public owned up to it and apologized again. Lena responded by telling her critics in the right-wing conspiracy to back the fuck up bros, while Duggar called his own behavior inexcusable. Dunham described the people upset about her behavior as disgusting old men, yet Dunham remains a liberal hero. Just like Bill Clinton, who was credibly accused of rape multiple times, and Harvey Milk, a gay rights icon who got his own Hollywood biopic, and a creep who regularly sodomized teenage boys. Progressive culture is filled to the brim with rapists, molesters, and deviants, but they never seem worried about any of it until some well-known Christian crosses the line. It's always interesting to watch progressives discover sexual morality just in time to denounce a right-winger, only to shed the pretense as soon as the next liberal pervert comes out of the woodwork. They are moral opportunists. They are the actual hypocrites. This outrage is a charade, a circus, a show, a political ploy. It always is. Alright, let's quickly go through the 3 examples Matt Walsh decided to give. The first one is an American writer, and it has a link to what the outrage involving her was, and you can go have a look. You know, something she did when she was 7 to her sister. And then Bill Clinton. Yeah, well, fuck Bill Clinton. And then the final example, Harvey Milk was the first openly gay elected politician in California, like decades ago, and they were going to honor him with a stamp in like 2013, and that's when this lawyer started calling him an evil man who shouldn't be honored, and just seems like a lot of homophobic stuff, and that's all I could find searching these accusations made. And now on to Matt Walsh's third point he had to make, and this is the one I really wanted to talk about. 3. I know I'm opening myself up to serious criticism here. Oh yeah, you are. But let me be honest with you. If my son, God forbid, came to me and admitted to doing what Josh Duggar did, I don't know that I would immediately run to the cops. Would you? Is it really that simple? That decision to have your child arrested as a sex offender would be an automatic thing for you? Really?
I know that the ultimate one, before you really got help, involved a very young daughter, and I'll avoid the age because I don't want to identify anyone specifically, but a single digit.
I guess I'm just a horrible person then. I don't know all of the details, nobody outside of the family does or ever will, but it appears that Josh's parents attempted to address the situation within their family before going to the church, and then eventually to a law enforcement officer. Again, there might be parts of this story that would change my analysis, but right now, based on what we know, it seems that they handled this the right way, or at least I can't say for sure that I would have known any better way to go about it. As a a parent, you have to think whether your 14-year-old son deserves to have his life ruined over his mistake. Maybe you would decide that he does. I can't say I would agree. Either way, there's no good answer, no simple answer, no happy answer. Something really, really bad has happened, and now you have to figure out the next step. It's not easy to know the next step, but it is certainly easy for the rest of us to stand off at a distance 12 years later and declare that they took the wrong one. Now, you see, Matt Walsh said that if his son came to him and admitted to abusing his daughters, he's not sure if he would go to the police. See, these people that keep saying there's a danger for their daughters to go into public bathrooms don't really seem to give a shit when it's coming from within inside their own house. They seem very quick to want to defend their son who's abusing their daughters. These Christians, same sort of people that disown their kids in a heartbeat if they come out as gay. But if they come out as a child molester, that's forgivable. Oh, and if you thought Matt Walsh's third point was pretty fucking bad, wait till you hear his fourth point. I'm confused about when past sins are relevant and when they aren't. Today I'm told Josh Duggar's actions from 12 years ago ought to be enough to, as Montel Williams declared, forever brand him a slime bag and a danger to kids. But I can recall recent cases like Mike Brown's where past crimes were completely irrelevant, even though the past crime happened like 3 minutes before he assaulted Officer Darren Wilson. I'm having trouble following the logic. See, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? Why would you bring up Michael Brown? He was shot dead by a police officer. Maybe if I put it like this, as a parent, you have to think whether your 18-year-old son deserves to have his life ended over his mistake. Alright, and here's the last bit of that article. Not that it matters, but I don't say any of this as a fan of 19 Kids and Counting. I respect the fact that it's wholesome entertainment, but if not for my wife demanding we watch it every Tuesday, I doubt I would ever tune in. That said, I admire the family. They are living by their convictions in defiance of cultural trends and clearly bestowing a strong faith in all of their children. That faith hasn't, as we established, made any of them perfect saints, but it seems genuine. Many people look at them like freaks because they have 19 kids. Personally, I wish we all had the courage to be freaks. That doesn't mean we all need to have 19 kids, but it does mean that we ought to be living and acting in ways that seem radical in our society. I don't see the Duggars as pretentious or holier than thou or snobbish or whatever other stock insult weak-minded secularists always throw at devout Christians. I see them instead as people who have their gumptions to live according to their convictions. They may not live perfectly, but it appears that they're trying, which is more than I can say for many in our culture. So go ahead and crucify the Duggars if you like. Burn them at the stake, rip them to shreds. I won't be joining you. Instead, I'll be off to the side praying that you can endure it when the mob eventually turns around on you. Now, I really hope some Matt Walsh fans have found their way to this video, watched it and got all annoyed and really want to type, oh, but he regrets that post. He said that, because we're about to go through that, as he said in this tweet. On the 20th of August 2015, I wrote a piece a while ago giving Josh Duggar the benefit of the doubt that he had changed his ways and turned to God. I now regret that post. Now, why does Matt Walsh regret that now? What happened that made him change his mind? Oh, I'm glad you asked.
Josh Duggar reportedly has 2 Ashley Madison accounts. Gawker reports the 19 Kids and Counting star is among the 37 million AshleyMadison.com users who had their identities exposed in a massive data breach earlier this summer. And the 27-year-old allegedly had 2 paid accounts linked to the adult site for people seeking extramarital affairs.
So Matt Walsh felt the need to come to Josh Duggar's defense when it was molesting his sisters. But when it comes to cheating on his wife, that's when Matt Walsh draws a line. That's when he can no longer defend him. Can you see how this is pretty messed up? But Matt Walsh wrote a whole Facebook post about it at the time as well, and I found it because I figure I'm not going to convince any Matt Walsh fans without at least showing that I'm trying to be fair to him, right? So let's go.
I'm not too proud to admit when I was wrong. So yes, I was wrong about the Duggars Duggar situation. If you recall, several months ago, it was revealed that Josh Duggar, the oldest son in the 19 Kids and Counting clan, sexually abused his sisters when he was 13 or 14 years old. This revelation was used by many anti-Christian folk as a way to prove that all Christians are hypocrites and the whole family values thing is a shame. I wrote a post in the early days of that story pointing out that the liberal outrage over sexual abuse seems to be rather selective and insincere. I further said that Christian ideals aren't disproved just because one Christian fails to live up to them, and I also said that by all accounts Josh has repented and changed his ways, and he should be forgiven. I stand by the first two parts of my argument, but on the last one I was misguided. Reports surfaced yesterday alleging that Josh Duggar paid for and maintained 2 Ashley Madison accounts over the last 2 years. Ashley Madison is a dating site for married people seeking affairs. It was hacked this week and records of 30 million adulterers were released. Josh is one of the 30 million. Just in the last hour or two, Josh admitted publicly to the affairs, so this is no longer alleged. He went from sexual abuser to serial adulterer. These are facts. On the profile, Josh specifies that he's looking for one-night stands and experimentation and other things in that vein. It's disgusting. The man has a wife and several kids, and in between trolling for affairs, he was on TV presenting himself as a Christian role model. So I was wrong about Josh Duggar being a repentant man. Clearly he isn't, or at least he wasn't. Maybe now he'll finally begin the process, but it's clearly impossible to believe that someone could be truly sorry for past sexual sin while currently in the process of fishing for affairs and experimental one-night stands. He's a traitor to his family. I feel awful for them, and I pray that Josh really does come to Christ. Beyond that, I pray his wife and kids somehow recover from all the shame Josh has brought upon them, because let's be clear, if you sign up for an adultery website and then your information gets hacked and your family ends up embarrassed and devastated, that is your fault. You are the one who victimized them. The hackers acted illegally, but this all happened because of your choices. Don't want your information stolen from an adultery website? Don't sign up for an adultery website. Pretty simple formula. I must also admit that the more I think about this, I realized I was too easy on the Duggar parents as well. Jim, Bob, and Michelle knew their eldest son was struggling with severe sexual sin. They knew their daughters had been abused. They knew their family was in the midst of moral and spiritual turmoil, yet they still decided to put themselves and their children on TV for 10 years. That's really just not a justifiable decision. Josh Duggar is clearly not equipped to be a world-famous face of Christian values, but he was put in that position, as were all of the Duggars, by the Ma and Pa Duggar. That doesn't excuse what he did, but it does indicate his parents were supremely reckless and self-serving. I generally am not a fan of parents putting their kids on TV, especially for years and years of their lives, depriving them of a normal childhood, but to do it when there's sexual abuse going on inside your own home, inexcusable. In any case, we learned yet again that, as Charleston said, the Christian ideal has never been tried and found wanting, but it has been tried and found difficult. To live up to our faith is difficult. Nobody does it perfectly. I know I certainly don't, but when we put ourselves in front of the world as role models, we are called to carry an even heavier burden of responsibility. Even those of us without a worldwide audience still have that burden, and we are still role models in some capacity, but the more people you have looking up to you, the more profound the duty. I don't blame Josh or his parents for being imperfect, but I do blame them for climbing onto the stage and seizing the limelight when they clearly were so compromised. The fall of the Duggar family is sad in many ways, and I'm still sickened by those who are taking pleasure in it, but this is a tragedy precipitated by conscious decisions. This is sin. This is what sin does. You might think it will bring you pleasure, but in the end it can only destroy. I guess that's a lesson. If only we didn't have to keep relearning it. We live in a sick world, everyone, and Christ is the only medicine. And then he includes a link that says Josh Duggar breaks silence following Ashley Madison claims I have been the biggest hypocrite ever. And I feel like I should read Matt Walsh's follow-up comment. The people accusing me of condoning child molestation are being either dishonest or extremely obtuse. I never did anything remotely close to that. In fact, in my original post, which I have admitted has been proven misguided, I called Duggar's actions terrible, evil, horrendous, disturbing, and a major sin. I'm not sure how those descriptions could ever be employed by someone attempting to condone something, but I wrote the original piece 2 days into the scandal, and I believed the information that was reported at the time, namely that the abuse stopped, that Josh was put in counseling, that the parents addressed it immediately, that Josh had changed his ways in adulthood, that he'd been upfront with his wife, that he had truly repented and had put that repentance into action, etc. My whole point of this follow-up is that I was wrong for believing these things. I didn't change my analysis of sex abuse. I thought it was a horrendous evil then, and I do now, but I changed my analysis of Josh Duggar. The Ashley Madison thing isn't worse than the sex abuse, but it indicates that he has just continued along that path he was on as a child, and it changes my estimation of the situation. I also pointed out in my original post that a person isn't a hypocrite for saying one thing and doing another. He's a hypocrite by definition for pretending to believe something he doesn't really believe. Again, because I thought he'd change his ways, I said his past sins don't make him a hypocrite, but evidently, because he was living a double life the whole time, it appears his convictions were likely fraudulent. And in any case, had I known the whole situation, I would not have chosen to make the point about hypocrisy and the other points, many of which I stand by in principle, related to this specific case. As I said, I shouldn't have hitched those points, even the valid ones, to this particular story. Finally, it's not true that I gave him a pass because he's a Christian or because I'm a fan. First, I didn't give him a pass. I simply believed what we were told about the situation. Second, I was never a fan. Third, I am often very, very hard on Christians, and I think my catalogue of articles reflects that.
I reckon we have a pretty good idea on Matt Walsh's thoughts on this whole situation, and here are some points I need to make. So, because of a scandal involving a show that he only watches because of his wife, he felt the need to go and defend the person in the middle of the scandal when it became public that they molested their sisters. That's what made Matt Walsh feel the need to go and defend him. But what it took for Matt Walsh to no longer support Josh Duggar was the Ashley Madison thing. And I think it's clear that I'm not mischaracterizing Matt Walsh's position on all this. He thought Josh Duggar should be forgiven when it became public that he molested his sisters, but could no longer give him the benefit of the doubt when it became public that he cheated on his wife. But with that said, you're better off cutting your support defense for Josh Duggar then than you would be to continue up until the most recent things we learned about Josh Duggar.
In Arkansas, a jury found former reality show star Josh Duggar guilty of downloading and possessing child porn. He now faces up to 20 years in prison and fines of up to $250,000 on each count. A federal Homeland Security agent testified that the images depicted the sexual abuse of children, including toddlers.
Well, in addition to the 12+ years, Duggar will also face 20 years of supervised release. He cannot have any unsupervised contact with children, even his own. Now, these are sketches of Duggar inside the courtroom today. Duggar declined to address the court, something Judge Timothy Brooks said defendants often do if they wish to appeal. The judge said he received several letters from Duggar's wife, mother, and family all about Duggar's good character, but he also received a chilling victim impact statement. Now, the judge says he found it aggravating Duggar's lack of acceptance and responsibility, saying the photos of child pornography found on Duggar's HP computer were horrific and sick.
Alright, one more thing I'd like to add to this video in regards to child abuse and the rhetoric that comes from people like Matt Walsh in regards to calling LGBTQ plus people groomers. Now, this is very dangerous. When you have people not understand what grooming actually is, you're making it harder for them to detect it, prevent it. Because if you have people thinking that just an LGBTQ teacher or whatever existing is grooming your children, and if that's where you focus, you let your guard down when it comes to actual groomers. Because you see, they won't just target children. They go after parents and gain their trust to be able to get to children. They get your trust so you believe them over your own child. And so if you make people think that a groomer is just someone who's LGBTQ plus and not have people understand that a groomer is most likely someone who's trying to gain your trust to get access to your children, you are putting so many people in danger. Not only innocent LGBTQ people that are not grooming your children, you're putting them in danger from threats, but you're also putting those families in danger from not being able to detect actual grooming. And the final thing I want to say about all this, kind of the thesis of the video, is homophobic, transphobic people are one thing, but then the ones that are really vocal about it, I personally tend to be suspicious that that is because they are closeted. You know, the ones that are constantly saying things like marriage should only be between a man and a woman and yada yada. I feel like how vocal they are about it is to overcompensate from being in the closet. But when people are very vocal about LGBTQ people being some sort of predator, I am then suspicious that whoever is saying that is overcompensating to cover for predatory behavior either by them or by people that they are close to. For example, the Duggar family.